Hey guys, how's it going? So this year we have BlizzConline. We're not going to have a physical BlizzCon this year, and also BlizzCon will be free for everyone to view, so that's something that we all can look forward to. In the past years, I do tend to watch it online. I've never actually physically gone, but yeah, this year everyone will be able to watch it, and I assume people will be able to live stream it with commentary and things like that, so that'll be interesting to see. Anyways, one of the biggest things we need to take away from BlizzConline this year is that nothing is final, okay? So the great thing that we saw with BlizzCon in 2018 for we had some news on Classic WoW, and we also at that time heard that there was going to be 4 phases that were coming to Classic WoW. Now, they wanted to launch with Molten Core, Onyxia, Maraudon, Dire Maul, Azergos, and Kha'Zix. So it would have been a lot of content all within Phase 1. And then they were going to have PvP and Blackwing Lair and ZG come out in Phase 2. So as you can see, they had everything kind of crunched together, and because of this, we, the players, had a really big outpouring of concern about the fact that they were doing this, and they went ahead and changed it. So if they do the same thing with TBC, we need to realize that our voices are important, and after BlizzCon, or BlizzCon Online, we need to understand that if we don't like something that we see or something that is talked about at BlizzCon, we need to speak up, and we need to talk about it on the forums and hopefully get things changed. There has been some potential leaks, but who knows how valid those leaks are. But I will say that a lot of people are worried about TBC in terms of how things are going to be launched and in what state of the game they are. Things changed over time, just like they did with Classic. And, even to this day, there's some people that still are upset with how Classic was handled in terms of the itemization progression, as, some things were changed throughout Classic's history. And then also we got the 1.12 talents, which obviously throughout Classic, there was changes to class talent trees, and things changed from there as well. So with these things, we also have to understand that TBC is going to be much the same. There's going to be things that we as a community or you as a player don't really like, and you need to make sure that you're heard and you get your message out there. I know one thing that everyone thought was going to be a great thing was spell batching, and I think spell batching overall was hated, and Blizzard recently changed that for TBC. So now in arenas, we're not going to have to worry, in the game in general, but one of the big places it's going to impact would be arenas, and we won't have to worry about spell batching within arenas. So that's going to make PvPing obviously much more enjoyable. So let's go through a little bit of a list here on things that you as a player and us as a community might not want to see within TBC. One of those things is going to be how the phases are set out. Now, this is very, very important, because just like how we saw Blizzard crunching a bunch of content together early on when they were talking about releasing Classic WoW content, it could be the same thing with TBC, and we need to be really careful with how Blizzard decides to roll things out in TBC, as with arena seasons and the gear that you can get from raids, it could really, really impact the game. And this is more than it would in Classic WoW, because Classic WoW, you don't really have a competitive PvP scene. It's really, the ranking is more of a time gate, and yes, having good gear obviously will help you out with your pre-mades or ranking on your own, but in general, it's not as big of a deal. Whereas if you get into a 3v3 and your team strictly PvPs and you have all the latest arena season gear, and then another team comes in and they have some crazy raid trinkets or weapons and they just demolish you, this could be a big impact for players and kind of getting frustrated at the game. So I really think it is important that they kind of match those PvP seasons up with the way that that content is gated, and how quickly you can get gear from PvP also matters, because some of those PvP pieces that you can get are actually better than PvE pieces that you would get for a while. So hopefully they can figure out a nice happy medium to where all the players are happy for the most part. I mean, it's obviously impossible to make everyone happy, but hopefully they can come up with something. And if we as players don't really like the way that they're headed with that, obviously we need to make our voices heard. Now, the next thing is, how will Blizzard decide to roll servers into TBC? Now, we don't know how they're going to roll out TBC servers, right? Many people assume that there'll be a way to copy your character over to a TBC server, or will these servers that we have now, the classic servers, roll directly into TBC and you have no choice but to continue into TBC as well? Now, I assume that what they will do is they'll have everyone roll over into TBC. Now, the reason why I think they're going to move everyone over into TBC is if they leave people behind on these classic servers, just because of how many servers they have, I think that the population sizes would be so incredibly small that anyone who wishes to just continue on a classic server would have a really, really bad time. My assumption is that they probably will have in the future 1 or 2 classic servers that you can play on that is just classic vanilla WoW, and it stays at 60 and everything like that. Who knows if you'll be able to copy your character over onto that server, but obviously we will get more information. And this is one thing that like a lot of people are up in arms about, is how they're going to roll out servers. Some people don't want to play TBC. Some people just want to stay and play classic WoW forever, or some people want a fresh TBC server, or some people want a fresh classic server. So these are all things that, again, the community needs to talk about and discuss and figure out what people want. Obviously, like I said, you can't make everyone happy, but it'd be nice to see what Blizzard decides to go with on this one. The next thing that we all are probably very interested to hear about, and will obviously impact how we prepare for TBC, is, are there going to be any like limitations on what you can take over to TBC? There's a lot of people out there in the game right now that are super, super wealthy. They have tons and tons of gold. They have like crazy amounts of assets and resources. And there's tons of people also that are preparing for TBC. So they're basically storing items right now on bank alts and on their different characters, literally just preparing for TBC. So when they go into TBC, items that they know are going to go up in price or go up in value or importance in terms of like crafting or materials, they're stockpiling those items. So this is going to affect the economy a lot. TBC, obviously, just like classic WoW, gold is really, really important, and there's a lot of gold sinks in the game. Not only your epic flying mount, but also just all the different important recipes that are early on for you to craft pretty good gear. Like there's pieces of gear from tailoring that stay relevant for a very long time. So being able to have the gold to buy materials and not have to spend all the time farming for those materials early on is going to put people ahead of the pack. And the reason why I bring this up is not to complain about it myself personally. I have a decent amount of gold, but there's a lot of players out there that really weren't interested in classic WoW, right? Or there's people that played a little bit of classic WoW, but then they kind of got burnt out. And so they didn't have the time to sit there and prepare for TBC. So they're going to be already kind of far behind in terms of the catch-up mechanics of a gold sink that really other players who've been playing classic WoW for all this time, they're going to have a leg up on the competition. Now, the best argument for this would be that, you know, people could do this back in the day too. There's tons of people out there that played classic WoW, and then when TBC came, they went into TBC with lots of gold. But I just don't think that the amounts of gold that you see right now in classic WoW is anything like people had back in the day. So, I mean, people going into TBC probably had a few thousand gold. And then, you know, the epic flying mount alone would have taken out all of that and even more. So I'd like to see what Blizzard has to say on this. Personally, I'm for like a reasonable gold cap. But even that being said, like, you don't really know how players will get around this. Blizzard would have to think of all sorts of other things to combat this, because people will just invest in items with all of their gold and then sell them once TBC comes around and make a bunch of money. So just because you can't go through into TBC with like liquid gold of that much gold, if they say set a 5,000 gold cap, people are just going to buy up all these materials with all of their excess gold and then be able to pull those into TBC as well. So like I said, this is one that's very important and a lot of people I know are concerned about. So it'll be interesting to see if at BlizzConline this year they discuss this, and also that us as a community, we discuss you know, what they decide to do and if we are okay with that, because at the end of the day, all of this stuff is really, really important for the health of TBC. Now, the next thing that is pretty important to a lot of people, and I myself really, really would like for it to be one way, and I'll get to that, but one of the things that people have been talking about is whether or not we are going to have a pre-patch, and also whether or not Blood Elves and Draenei will be actually released a little bit earlier than TBC itself. Now, the argument for that would be that TBC will come out and players will start to level up in Outlands, and people want to have their new Draeneis and Blood Elves already at level 60 so that they can play with their guild mates or whatever and level in Outlands and not have to start at level 1 at that time. Now, I personally would love to see this just for my own selfish reasons, because I want to level up a Blood Elf Paladin as kind of like an alt character that I just use for farming and boosting and various things. But I don't want that to be my main character, so once TBC actually launches, I just want to kind of be able to focus on my druid and have fun doing that, and I just want to have this alt Blood Elf already at level 60, so then slowly over time I can level from 60 to 70. So that's my personal selfish reason, but I don't know how people feel about this. I know I've heard a lot of people saying that they would like to see Draenei and Blood Elves early, but I also haven't talked to a bunch of people about this, so maybe I'm in the minority here, but we'll have to see on what they say about that. But then also just in general, a pre-patch I think would be an amazing thing. I remember back in the day, the pre-patch was a ton of fun. I just remember people being outside of Ironforge. This is back when I played on Alliance. I had a gnome rogue, and there was just a ton of people outside of Ironforge, and people were testing out all these new talents and things that they had at 60. I remember seeing druids in tree form and thinking it was the craziest thing ever. But it would be a lot of fun just in kind of like the downtime that we're seeing with Nax and everything, if they came out with the pre-patch. Obviously in the pre-patch there was also the ability to do arena skirmishes, which would be kind of fun at level 60. Obviously people like at level 60, when you have Nax gear and everything, PvP is so terrible. It's so bursty, and you basically die so quickly to rogues and mages and things like that. But it would be fun, and just obviously, like I said, give something for people to do while they wait for actual TBC to come out. So they obviously have done pre-patches for I think every single expansion they've put out. So it'd be kind of fun if they had the pre-patch. And I personally, like I said, would love to see the Draenei and Blood Elf ability to start leveling them early. But we'll have to see about that. And obviously, like I said, this is why the community of Classic is so important, because we were able to get things changed that we didn't like seeing at the 2018 BlizzCon when they were talking about Classic. And you know, we made our voices heard and we got those things changed. And I really, really hope that we can do the same things with this time around with TBC. Like, obviously, if everything is hunky-dory and everyone's excited with the way things sound for TBC, then there's not going to be much discussion on the forums and everyone's going to be happy. But we know how the forums are after some information gets put out. Everyone has a differing opinion, which is you know, sometimes the point of the forums. But if enough people are upset about something, just like they were with the phases, I really do hope that Blizzard steps in and does something about it, because I think TBC, just like Classic WoW, is going to be tons of fun. However, there's a lot of things that could make it go one way or the other in terms of how they decide to flush out this content and give it to us. So that's that, guys. I'm really looking forward to BlizzCon Online this year. It'll be interesting to see how it is, because obviously this is the first time they've ever done it online, so that alone will be interesting. But anyways, I'm going to make more content on TBC coming up in the future. Obviously, BlizzCon is kind of like a very important time for all of us, because it kind of gives us a roadmap going forward and kind of gives us a little bit of insight into how they're thinking about doing TBC. So that's kind of why I've been holding back on doing any content, because things could really change in terms of like how TBC will be announced and pushed forward in terms of like how we're getting the content. So yeah, that's why I'm waiting for TBC and waiting for all this information to come out to start making content. Obviously, once BlizzCon Online is over with, I can start pushing out some stuff. So anyways, guys, really appreciate you watching, and as always, I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care.